Vince Colonnese, alongside Mary Walter.
Good morning. Joining us now, Tom Fitton, the president of Judicial Watch, with us right here in studio. Tom, good morning.
Good morning. Good to be with you guys again.
Let's go back to last week when the news came out that Bruce Ohr had told members of Congress, that he told the higher-ups in the FBI and the DOJ the realities of the dossier, who funded it, where it came from, and that there were some doubts about the dossier.
That's exactly right. Well, Mary, there were two stories last week. One was this fake Buzzfeed news story that got a big play, but this Bruce Ohr story was the more important one, which, of course, the media happily ignored. And Ohr had not only warned top levels of the DOJ, but top levels of the FBI that, look, I got this dossier. It comes from a guy who wants to see Trump, desperate to see Trump not elected, and they're connected to the Clinton campaign. And by the way, you can't really trust it. So who else did he tell there? Andrew Weissman, who's now number 2 in the Mueller operation, the TAC dog, as he's known. Judicial Watch found he was sending emails supporting Sally Yates as she resisted Donald Trump, the Obama holdover in the beginning administration that she had to be fired over. So you have this anti-Trumper getting this information, another Mueller, soon-to-be Mueller deputy getting this information that the dossier was bunk. And yet they continued to use it. In fact, they went ahead several months later and used it to justify the FISA warrants on the Trump team, namely Carter Page.
Yeah, and that's
1, 2, 3, 4 times they used it.
So it's to me
never told the court the background as discussed by Bruce Ohr.
To me, there's nothing particularly terrible about the FBI being given a tip, even if it's not fully vetted. Then they can take time to vet it. That's sort of what the FBI does. They're the Bureau of Investigation. Here's the issue: presenting it to the FISA court when you know that much about it and you don't tell them any of it.
Specifically, because we did get the FISA court warrant documents, the applications, they said, well, we speculate it might be someone who doesn't want to see President Trump elected. Speculate. They were told it was the Clinton campaign.
You knew specifically.
They knew. They were lying to the court. And they couldn't corroborate it. To your point, Vince, they had months and months. They couldn't corroborate it. James Comey famously testified it was minimally corroborated.
Right.
So two things out of what you just said. We had spoken earlier about how Bill Barr saying that he trusts Mueller. He believes in Mueller. Yet, to your point, you've got Weissman sitting on his committee. You've got one of Hillary Clinton's lawyers sitting on Mueller's team. So how can you trust him when he's making those types of choices on his investigative team?
That's exactly right. And special counsels are appointed presumably to ensure confidence in the fair administration of justice. And when you have biased people like Andrew Weissman, who's the number 2, as I said, an anti-Trump activist who attended Hillary Clinton's election night party in New York City. I mean, how many top-level Justice Department officials go to the big campaign party for a presidential candidate? Andrew Weissman did. And then on top of this, you had Peter Strzok also involved in all this, who was an anti-Trumper. Lisa Page, also involved in all this, was an anti-Trumper. And, Mr. Mueller, to me, needs to be questioned about his administrative activities.
He does have his own administration.
Yeah, he's running the Justice Department in large measure here. No one questioned him in Congress about these hires that you're raising point about, Mary. Why not? Why is Mueller above investigation himself?
So last week, I think people were pleased to see that Mueller finally came out and said, okay, this news story, fake. And he knocks down a Buzzfeed story. There was one problem with that, though. The fact that he actually took the positive step of saying that story is fake almost gave kind of a weird tacit approval to every other story that he's failed to come out and knock down in the last 2.5 years. Where has been Bob Mueller on all of the news stories that have been coming out that are about the granular details of his investigation? Is that suggestive of the fact that all of that was true? I mean, what should Mueller be doing when it comes to these press stories? What should be his standard operating procedure?
Well, frankly, he should be closing up shop. It's been 2 years. He either has the goods or he doesn't. And this is one of the problems with this special counsel operation that I think is unconstitutional, but it's also harassing and impairing the presidency of the United States. Because when you've got this overhanging him, How can he operate fully, and how can he do his job the way we want him to do his job?
It's a bit schizophrenic because, like, he actually released that statement, it seems like, to relieve the president of the pressure that was created by a fake news story.
There was a little mini political crisis about whether the president was going to be removed because he was implicated in obstruction of justice.
Exactly.
And I tell you, this tells you why we need to shut it down, because when you've got this investigation ongoing, the suggestion is the president did something wrong, and there's no evidence. And everything that we know about is that he was being victimized and illicitly targeted. And Mueller's benefiting, by the way, from this dossier. The fourth and final application was signed off by Rod Rosenstein in the middle of the Mueller appointment.
More with Tom Fitton coming up. In studio with us, Tom Fitton, the president of Judicial Watch. Tom, something very interesting happened. Donald Trump Jr. has been accusing Adam Schiff of leaking about some of his testimony, saying the leaks are coming from Adam Schiff. And Adam Schiff yesterday said something very interesting when asked about this by CNN's Wolf Blitzer.
That the president's son, Donald Trump Jr., accused you of last night. Listen to this.
Out of testimony at about 8 o'clock at night looking, and CNN is running quotes from noon on about my testimony, in the House Intelligence Committee. I mean, that has to say something about what's going on in there. Since he's never met a camera he didn't love, I would bet a lot of money that it was him. Out of testimony at about 8.
All right, you heard, you got the point. You want to respond?
Sure. He's been making this claim all along. What upsets Don Jr., and I can understand why he's upset, is he was saying publicly, I'm fully cooperating with Congress, I'm answering all their questions, and then he goes before our committee and refuses to answer a whole host of questions, making completely fallacious claims of privilege. And we called him out on it, as we have done with other witnesses. Now, he calls that a leak because we exposed the fact that he refused to answer questions and was making up some attorney-client privilege to cover conversations between he and his father when neither is an attorney nor the client of the other. So that's his upset. That's not a leak. It is exposure of his non-cooperation.
So Adam Schiff just said that he leaked, but it's not a leak because he agrees with it being leaked in order to expose someone with whom he disagrees. Wow.
The rules don't apply if you think they ought not to apply. That's the game here in Washington, D.C., and especially if your target is Donald Trump. The rule of law doesn't apply to the protections of the rule of law doesn't apply to Donald Trump. The Democrats and the left and the anti-Trumpers tell us that the president is above the law, and of course the president isn't above the law, but he's not beneath the law. He's not beneath the protection of the law. And as far as I'm concerned, the crisis right now is the president is being denied the sort of institutional protections and the protections of due process in the law that others would be able to get, and it's indicated by these nasty leaks from the likes of Adam Schiff, who want to overthrow the president.
Just very quickly, is that a crime to leak that?
That may be a violation of House rules. I mean, to be clear, everyone leaks in Washington and in Congress, but these are leaks that out of the Intelligence Committee, which are a bit more serious.
They're tactical leaks, not meant to pursue justice, but to subvert it. And
some of the leaks out of the leftist Dems in Congress, it's hard to tell where the leaks came from, but they've been behind, it looks like, many false reports about the Trump-Russia issue.
Well, speaking of that, and reports about the Trump-Russia issue, the report that Mueller spiked last week, Buzzfeed's report that the President of the United States had instructed Michael Cohen to lie to Congress, Mueller comes out and says that's not true. Then you get Adam Schiff, goes on the Sunday shows over the weekend. He was asked, are you going to investigate this yourself? And he says, yep, I'm taking it up. So what you've got, Byron York is pointing this out today, Mueller's investigation may come back with nothing on the president, but that's not stopping Adam Schiff. It looks like the Congress is going to go full steam ahead to try and figure out a way they can impeach the guy.
And it looks like the Mueller operation conveniently may be leaking, or people close to the Mueller operation are leaking in the DOJ and FBI. And, who picks it up? The Democratic House will now pick it up and continue to harass President Trump. And, this is why I think the Justice Department needs to curtail or shut down the Mueller investigation, because right now it's just another vehicle for Democratic attempts to impeach the president, and Justice Department shouldn't play any part in that.
Well, Tom, thank you for all the good work you do. We appreciate it. Keep the pressure on, and thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
So much for joining us.
You're welcome.